Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I am your host, Stephen Peinecker. And folks, I just want to tell you that we're going to have the event of the century, the fight of the century. It's going to be, we got the Colosseum in the background. We've got the battle ready to go, the battle royale between the two Jacobs wrestle. But before we get there, folks, we're going to talk about this exciting event. I just want to actually just mention something real quick to everybody. I'm going to do this little screen share here, folks. So I just want to let everybody know that I just recently have been booked as the Thursday night keynote speaker at the Firm Foundation 33rd International Book of Mormon Conference, and I will be speaking the night of April 18th from 7 to 8 p.m. So make sure you go and book tickets to go see me. You can buy a one-day pass or you can buy a three-day pass. There's all different options out there. I have had people inquiring whether or not they could just pay for the speech. I don't know. I'll look into that. But I'm very excited, and possibly on Wednesday, the 17th, if you can't make it to the book, to the expo, perhaps we will do a meetup somewhere in the valley Wednesday night. So I look forward to seeing everybody in April. So make sure you get the early bird special. I'm really excited. And the topic is, it's basically going to be a Protestant defense of the Book of Mormon. I'm also going to probably talk about the need for unity within the restoration, that before Zion can be achieved, the restoration needs to be restored in the sense of getting people back together as opposed to all the different breakups that we've had. And I think that's also a very important message that I'd like to share with the audience as well. Okay, so this is the deal, folks. Jacob IsBell, I want you to pull up the sign right now. Let's just do it right now. I want everybody, this is the event of the century. Me coming out there, that's a big deal, but this is even bigger. During General Conference weekend, people, when you're already out there, you're going to be seeing the Jacobs wrestle. Jacob IsBell versus Jacob Hansen. Jacob IsBell, tell me what, okay, so here's the information. It's all up there, and this is at 5385 South 1950 West Roy, Utah, and that is at 6 p.m., and you can close that out. We're going to show that back later on as well before we wrap this up. Jacob, thank you for sharing that. Looks great, both of you in your karate outfits. This is fun. What made you, Jacob, did you reach out to Hansen to do this, or what? How did this all get started? And by the way, Jacob Hansen, welcome to the show as well.
There's no way it's going to get confusing with multiple Jacobs going on, bearded ones from an Anglo-Saxon background. No confusion at all. I do win the beard contest. It's a sore spot for me if somebody else does win the beard contest. It happens from time to time. I reached out to Jacob Hansen. He and I have debated on a couple of things on his program, and since even though I have major disagreements with Jacob Hansen, I incredibly respect his willingness to engage others on disagreements. And I become annoying sometimes, and sometimes I get annoyed. And because of that, maybe this would be best settled. Not anything is really going to be settled, but it's going to be fun to compete in the actual organized jujitsu competition, one with another. I've had no fewer than 24 people reach out to me asking, when is the debate taking place? And I said, I don't know what you're talking about. We are wrestling.
I had the same thing. People, even my own dad, because I had sent it and I was kind of like, oh, and he's like, so when's this debate taking place? Dad, no, like it's a real, like we're actually doing jujitsu. Like we're going to be wrestling with one another physically with our bodies.
I have to point out, there's going to be a scripture tournament going on, Book of Mormon trivia, Bible trivia is going to go on. There's going to be prizes there, probably a big fat 3-pound tomahawk steak for whoever wins the scripture tournament portion of things. There's going to be a couple of other jiu-jitsu matches. There's going to be food included, but tickets are $20. It happens at Power MMA, a wonderful place to be able to host a few hundred people. And Jacob Hansen, I'll try not to be boring. You better not be boring either.
Well, and just so everybody knows, Jacob IsBell is the brains and power behind this. I've basically been invited to come and take on his challenge, and I've accepted. Yeah, no, you've put on quite a thing here. I'm really looking forward to what it's going to be like.
I intend for it to happen each general conference weekend, some event, not necessarily you and me wrestling, but if there is interest in it, there'll be something. But I would like to put these family-friendly, high-energy events with scripture and actual physical competition going on each general conference weekend.
You know, I'm just thinking there's a few evangelical apologists I wouldn't mind maybe doing something.
Get them there in the range of humility.
Well, you know what? Just so everybody knows too. Obviously, Jacob and I think we're both going to do our best, try and win. But at the end of the day, like we consider each other as we're on good terms. Like consider each other friends. I consider your friend Jacob, and so I found that thing where you have like two schoolyard kids who get in a fight. And then like they end up becoming really good friends afterwards because they kind of like got it out of their system and they end up respecting each other more because of the fact that they like were willing to kind of go toe to toe and slug it out. It's like a weird thing, but it is, there's something about sort of, and obviously it has to be an even matchup or whatever, but there is something literally sort of cathartic about physically engaging with another person and kind of settling it out. And you leave with a sense of respect because at least with martial arts, I did some boxing when I was younger. There's a respect that you have for anyone who's willing to actually engage, right? Like you look at each other as, okay, if you won or you lost, whatever, you were the kind of person that had the courage to actually get into the ring. And obviously we're talking right now about sort of a physical competition, but even in the world of apologetic debate, people that are willing to actually engage in the conversation, like there's a level of respect that has to be had for that. Yes. And I hope that even though like, obviously in this case, we're messing with our jujitsu skills that we have and, it'll be fun, but I think it's that same kind of principle. And I think it helps bring people together actually.
I'm also thinking of some Mormon apologists that I think I need to take to the mat too. Now, as I think I've already
Bradley, I'll take on Don Bradley and Brian C. Hale same night.
This is great. So I want people to understand, Jacob IsBell, why don't you explain why is it that you guys have these disagreements? What are some of the debates that you have that finally you decided, you know what, we got to take it to the mat and figure this whole thing out?
So in other words, I've given longer form interviews. The very short version for me, I was born and raised LDS. I had my initial come to Jesus moment at age 15, and I changed my life. I was an abnormally enthusiastic and prepared missionary for the church. I had sacred experiences out there in the mission field and regular wrestling matches as a missionary. It wasn't until I was the Elders Quorum president in 2019 of the ward where I was at in North Ogden. Friend challenged me, why do you think Joseph Smith was a polygamist? I have zero issue with that topic. I felt like I could teach it impromptu at any time. I got guided through a spiritual journey in learning for myself that Joseph Smith never taught nor practiced polygamy, and that Doctrine and Covenants section 132 is fraudulently attributed to him. Now, I know that that's very much debated in scholastic circles. I reached a spiritual spiritual answer on that, and I've been actively engaged in promoting what I view as the truth that Joseph Smith was vigorously honest on everything that he taught regarding marriage and monogamy. When everything that you'll find from Joseph Smith, public or private, regarding polygamy is to completely condemn it. He fought it inside of the church with his religious position. He fought it in his political position, and he died. And shortly after his death, the polygamists who wanted to follow Brigham Young came to Utah. And so there's a very distinct delineation with the teachings of Joseph Smith and the Restoration, and what ended up becoming the New and Everlasting Covenant is now polygamy. So I would say that's our biggest disagreement, is my understanding that Joseph Smith never lied about marriage, monogamy, or polygamy.
Okay, Jacob Hansen, I'd like for you to weigh in, but I don't know, how is it possible that you can have a beard like that and be a polygamy denier?
My goodness, this is actually not real. This is how I hide from the feds.
That's great.
Actually, I think Jacob IsBell and I as libertarians, generally speaking, I think we might actually get along pretty well. All three of us probably here in that regard. Obviously Jacob and I actually have debated this very subject on my channel. And so that was kind of what led to all of this, doing the jiu-jitsu match itself. And when Jacob reached out to me about it, I mean, I think we kind of, just a little bit of background on us as far as our skill levels here. I wouldn't want to go up against somebody who's way better than me, and I wouldn't want to go up against somebody who doesn't have any skills at all. Jacob, if I'm not mistaken, you said you've been wrestling since you were like 6 years old?
Yeah. So since kindergarten age, my dad got me wrestling, and it was in junior high when I lived my 7th and 8th grade years at Mount Logan Middle School is where I attended, but I became very proficient, especially in my middle school years, went undefeated my 8th grade year, moved to Oregon, a small redneck town called Molalla, Oregon, which produces some high-level wrestlers. I didn't realize what a good wrestling program they had until I wrestled against some college people, and I was competitive against them. Even a high-level Mongolian wrestler from Mongolia taught him a little bit of humility, all 5'7" of me. So I've got a collegiate rule style background, and I have trained jujitsu off and on for a number of years, up and at it again in the hopes of not embarrassing myself against Jacob Hansen, upcoming April 6th General Conference weekend. Be there.
Well, and for me, my background with it is that I actually did more. I did wrestle in high school 1 year, my freshman year. But then I actually did more boxing when I was growing up. And for those of you who don't know anything about jujitsu or wrestling or how this all works, jujitsu, I always tell people it's just wrestling, but it has a different objective. Instead of to pin someone, you get them into a position to where they tap out, to where they say, okay, they cry uncle, essentially.
They're avoiding the loss of a limb.
Exactly. They're avoiding breaking their arm or being put to sleep because they get choked out or something like that. So that's the basic idea of it. So if you have a deep wrestling background, it's provides a lot to it. However, I have done when they have belt levels. So in jiu-jitsu, the first belt level is white belt. And then the second level is a blue belt. Now, these are both still considered fairly beginner belts. It isn't until you start getting it to purple or brown belt that you're starting to get into what's more advanced jujitsu. And so I'm at a blue belt level. So I'm the way somebody explained it to me, it was like white belt, which is the lowest, is like freshman, blue belt's like JV, purple belt's like varsity, brown belt's like college. And if you're a black belt, like you're a pro, like you're really good. And so, anyway, I'm a blue belt, so not anything too crazy or special, but Jacob, if I'm not mistaken, you're still at the white belt level in jiu-jitsu, even though you have a ton of wrestling because you haven't done jiu-jitsu as long. Is that correct?
So, yeah, I'm officially considered a white belt. With my wrestling background, I'm competitive with the blue belts and purple belts that I have rolled with.
Yeah, and that's
do this. Give me the physical tail of the tape, stats, size, stature. You already told us your belt.
Oh, for me?
Yeah.
Okay, so 5'10", 5'9". I'm right in between there. I think 5'9.5".
Go 5'10". Go. I'll even
5'10". And I'm usually right around 180-ish, right around there. So I think that we're roughly in the same ballpark, as far as size goes. So that's about it for me.
I'm 5'7" with my shoes on, about 180 right now, and I ate bananas and peanut butter before this interview. Maybe I'll get up to 200 by the time you and I meet.
That's great.
That's it'll be more of a chance. So anyway, I think we have a fairly even matchup. I think that so I was like, hey, I'll do it. And if I lose, great. If I win, great. What now we had talked about some of the rule set stuff. I think we're doing standard white belt, IBJJF.
And I didn't even know what that was, but when you said it means that there's no leg locks, I'm like, that's awesome because I don't know leg locks.
Yeah, neither do I. So it's all good.
Here we go.
Leg locks are, well, there's one that I can do if I were to end up in the position, but I don't know that I'd ever end up in that position. So we'll I don't think anyone who's looking for leg locks, I don't think we're going to have a lot of that. But, and then, and this is what we talked about, and I guess we can almost work this out right here over the air. And that is, I was thinking if you submit me in the first 30 seconds of the match, right?
That would be quite a feat. Like anytime that it's within 30 seconds, it's like, holy crap.
Yeah. Well, if you do, my thought is that we're going to do one round. I think 5 minutes, 5 minutes. A typical jiu-jitsu match is 1 round, 5 minutes. But if it does end early, I think we do another if it ends earlier than the first half. So if in the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds, either of us get submitted, that we do one more.
We'll say 60 seconds. If either of us finish the other person within 60 seconds, in other words, people get less than a minute of a show, we'll run it back again. And
that's good. That works for me.
And
yeah, but what if you tie? Don't you then have to play the best 2 out of 3?
So if it goes beyond the 5 minutes without a clear victor, at that point we pull out the swords. And we just chop each other off.
No, it's scored. So there's a score match. I don't know what we actually haven't talked about. What if we did tie?
There should be like an overtime 2 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I agree. First
In
to
other words,
score a point of any kind.
I've been doing the rowing machine. I've been other stuff to make sure that I don't gas, because that would be embarrassing. How boring would it be if you and I both gassed? Now,
I'm worried. I'm a little worried about the gassing side of it. I'm not in good shape.
if one is still on it, but the other gasses, that's still fun to watch. Like, oh, look how good that Jacob was, whichever one. But yeah. Oh, don't be boring, dude. Don't be boring.
Yeah, no, we'll give everybody a show. That's the main thing, right?
Can I please tell my Mongolian wrestling story as a missionary? I don't know why I'm asking, because I'm forcing it on you guys right now.
Let's do it.
Okay, I recently got made a district leader out in the mission field in Iowa, and I was in the Iowa State University when Cale Sanderson was there. But
and for people who don't understand, Iowa State is like the premier wrestling school in the country.
And there were some good Mormon boys that were on the team, and they brought me to train with them a couple of times. And I didn't feel out of my element when I would roll with people, when I would do wrestling with people there. Cale Sanderson was just so gentle to me. He just toyed with me. But there was splits. There was about 10 of us missionaries that got together, and we were about, okay, you go out with so-and-so, you go out with so-and-so, as we do work in a small town in Iowa. Elder Soil Erdene was this big Mongolian, and he was the one who learned English the best. It was very difficult for a few of the other Mongolian missionaries to learn English at all. Soil Erdene had big shoulders. He was much taller than me, and he nearly killed his trainer because his trainer was physically diminutive, and you could tell, he picked him up like Darth Vader choke slam sort of thing. He's from a culture to where there's physical dominance, and that's like the criteria for leadership. Me, small me, when I said, and Soil Erdene, yeah, you go out with so-and-so, you go with so-and-so, and you come with me, Soil Erdene. No, we wrestle first. Okay. And I say, all right, let's do this. We pushed the couches back, took off the ties, and within 60 seconds, I used his weight against him, got him thrown over, got a pin. No, again. And we do this 3 times in a row. And the next 2 times, it took over a minute each time. But each time after I beat him, that 3rd time, he's like, okay, I'll go with you. And he and I got along so well. He just needed that physical reminder. This little guy, he's going to do a little something against a big Mongolian.
Well, now I'm extra nervous here. All right. It's like that we have the 60-second rule, people. So he'll at least get me twice, right?
Like, I'm trying to learn how to do submissions, which I don't really know very well. Like, the wrestling background makes it so I'm good. And I had to learn how to shoot in without exposing my neck. Like, when I first started doing this, my neck would get snatched up.
The same problem. The bad wrestling habits of sticking your head where you shouldn't.
Yeah. But I remember this little Mexican guy, Yuli. He was probably like 30 pounds less than me, and I'm not all that big. And he would work me over.
Fascinating. Well, I just want to know, it's interesting, Jacob, just before off camera, you had mentioned that somebody reached out to you. You didn't know who it was, but it was actually Nick Jones, the ex-Mormon bishop who's just listened to my program last week, and Mormon Stories, actually reached out to you about this match. And maybe just talk a little bit about that. You just found out that was him.
So I posted so I've seen I have not watched his video, but I understand that he recently stepped down as Mormon bishop, and there's a viral video regarding his reasons why. I posted the poster that we shared a little bit earlier in the Latter-day Lobsters group on Facebook, and he responded, I would smash both of them. And I looked at his pictures like,
he would. Okay. He's a black belt. And just so let me give a little bit of, for anyone who doesn't know, in some martial arts, getting a black belt is easier than others. And in fact, even kids can get black belts. In jujitsu, it's usually, I think, 15 years of training until you can get it. And it is the guys who get the black belts, they know what they're doing. Like, they are serious level. I was saying there, if I ever encounter somebody who has a black belt, it's like, that's why guns are invented, to protect you from people with that level of physical dominance, because it isn't even their strength. Like, my black belt jujitsu instructor at my gym, he weighs, I think, 135 pounds. He went into, they have what are called open competitions, right? So this is where anyone, any belt level, any weight level, it's just show up and see who's going to be the top dog out of everybody, right? And he went up against a guy who was a purple belt, which is an advanced belt, who weighed 260 pounds. Okay? 135-pound guy against 60 pounds. And this guy knew what he was doing. This isn't like a new jiu-jitsu guy. My instructor did end up losing. He lost by 1 point at the very end of the match. And when I watched that, I was like, this is like a magical superpower. When you, like, my 135-pound jujitsu instructor, who's a black belt, will destroy anyone out there who does not have serious martial arts training. Karate, I don't care what you are, even if you have like those, like jujitsu, another, just a promo jujitsu, because I'm a big believer, because I've done other martial arts. The reason I've become such a jujitsu fan is because they tested this. In the 1990s, the UFC was started as an experiment to see which fighting style, if you just throw people in a cage and you say, go for it, like, whoever quits, that's who wins. And we're going to see which fighting style is won. And Royce Gracie won. I think it was the first 5 in a row. There were no weight classes. It was just anybody against anybody. And he won, even though he only weighed like 175 pounds. And he did it using jujitsu. And I was like, when I learned about that, and then I watched my trainer Ryan compete, I was like, dude, this is incredible. And it's also super fun. And anyway, I could say a ton of things about it, but I've become a big jujitsu enjoyer. So when I heard that bishop was a black belt, and he said, and I knew he knew some jujitsu because he threatened Cardin with a heel hook. And if you know jujitsu, you know what a heel hook can do to a person's knee. You go, oh, don't do that one. Don't take that match.
Well, just so everybody knows, I've gotten Cardin and Nick are in communication with each other. I have facilitated conversations between the two. Nick kind of felt bad after he heard that of Cardin's health condition, that he kind of felt like he was piling on a little there. So, and Nick Jones is a new voice in this whole conversation we're having, and it's a lot of different diverse voices, people who are in the church, out of the church, transitioning in, transitioning out. We're really, honestly, Jacob, that conversation we had a couple weeks ago, just talking about all the tumultuous stuff that's going on in the church now, with the whole gay marriage issues, and there's so much going on. And I think what's so important is, first of all, this is the only neutral Mormon podcast. This is the Switzerland of Mormonism. This is a place where people can have these adult conversations. I heard back from a lot of people who really, from progressives, ex-Mormons, you name it, conservatives, all really thought that the conversation we had was really important. And I think that what you guys are doing are also demonstrating, okay, that you can have opposite views, but you don't have to dehumanize the other person. You can recognize, like God told me when I first started this channel, just remember, everybody's an image bearer. They're all image bearers, and treat them accordingly. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And we see so much just anger and fighting going on. And we have it in the ex-Mormon community. We have it in the TBM community. We have those communities even being torn to pieces because of politics and all this kind of stuff. And I think it's really important that we step aside. Hey, you know what? We come to positions in our life. We have certain values, core principles that guide us. Just because somebody's slightly different than me doesn't mean that they're the devil incarnate. And I think what you guys are doing is showing that you can have disagreements, but also humanize each other and actually be friends. What do you guys say to that?
And if you just can't settle it, then you just go into a ring together with each other, and you just do what Jacob IsBell and I are doing.
That's it.
And I'll have to say, so I've named it Spirit of Joseph Wrestling. And because when I reached out to Jacob Hansen, he's like, I want to say yes, but I want to make sure that we're doing in the right kind of spirit demonstrated by Joseph Smith. I'm like, yeah. So I called it Spirit of Joseph Wrestling. There is a story that floats around about Joseph Smith wrestling Heber C. Kimball and breaking his leg. So I don't know how true that is. Nobody here is looking to break one another's leg, but I figure if Jacob, who became Israel, wrestled an angel and like submitted him and got his blessing, we ought to be prepping ourselves to do the same.
Well, it's funny. I know that I love the Spirit of Joseph Wrestling. People that may not know that Joseph was actually a great wrestler, and he was known for that. So we're going to continue the tradition, and on the church's birthday,
I'm going to put the
April
invitation.
6th.
I'm going to put the invitation out once again to Nick Jones. I didn't realize that it was that Nick Jones, but yeah, if we can get him to be a part of it, I would like this to be a regular thing. But aside from the wrestling aspect, which is guaranteed to be fun, I really do think it's in harmony with how Heavenly Father wants his young men to develop into men, is being physically capable, able to handle the body that they've been given. there's going to be scripture tournament. I would love for Jacob Hansen for you to join in if you got any friends that want to do that. One of the methods of competition is somebody's going to simply start reading somewhere in the Book of Mormon, and the first person to be able to say the chapter and verse is going to score points, and again, win that glorious 3-pound tomahawk steak by knowing your Book of Mormon.
So freaking cool. I love this. This is so cool, guys. I think you're two really cool human beings that I've gotten to know as I've been on this journey within the restoration. And yeah, you know, this guy was a great wrestler. And that's him, everybody. Just so you know, in case you're wondering what Joseph Smith looked like, that's the dude. And he's
you should tell that dude to grow a beard. I almost lost my testimony when I realized that Brigham Young's got a better beard than that guy.
That's great. But yeah, that's what I love about, you know, to me, I think that I love to humanize Joseph. He was a man of flesh and bone. He was a man that he was a fighter. One of my favorite movies of all time was this movie called The Apostle, starring Robert Duvall.
Yeah, I've heard and never watched it.
Watch it. It's an awesome film. But there's a scene where he's with, was it Billy Bob Thornton? Is that the actor name or whatever? A famous actor. And there's a scene in which he's harassing him at his church. He's trying to start this church in rural Louisiana, and this guy is harassing him. And finally, the apostle, he says, "Okay, we got to go outside and handle it like men." And he just beats the crap out of this guy. And everybody at the church are all cheering their pastor. "All right, pastor, you go, you get him." And I thought, you know, sometimes, and of course we had the fighting Parson, right? The guy, what's his name? Willard Bean.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a fighter too. And so this kind of ties in also, of course, with the 19th century view of muscular Christianity. So there's just a lot of different things going on, you know, and I love it. I love actually the having some testosterone here and do some manly.
Well, and I also, so I read a book not too long ago, just the last little comment here, called Professor in the Cage. And it was this professor who was studying like human behavior, and he actually joined an MMA gym specifically to fight. And he was going to do like part of his research, he was going to do an MMA fight himself. And in the book, one of the big theses of the book is that people tend to think of these sports as a love of violence, where really what it is it's actually a love of human excellence. What we actually don't enjoy violence, meaning like if I get someone who's a total mismatch, and that may be the case, Jacob IsBell may totally destroy me.
I don't know about that.
But there's no honor in that. Like nobody wants to go watch a fight where a guy just beats the crap out of someone who's totally weaker than them. What they want to see are two people that are equally matched, because when they're equally matched, then you can see courage on display. You can see real skill on display. You can see people really engaging in like the most just real human interaction. And in that, heroism emerges. And when I had this thing, there's sort of a glorification of war and violence. And I've come to realize, it's funny, I have a relative who's actually in special forces. And it was funny, he told me, he's like, yeah, one of the things that you do in the military is you just never have a fair fight. If it's a fair fight, you leave, you run away. He says, you always are trying to basically take advantage of people that when they're at their weakest moment and overwhelm them, like, so that it's not even fair. And that isn't glorious. Like, where's the glory in like murdering people? Where's the glory in like having a guy who's way bigger just violently severely injure someone who's way weaker than them? Like, there's nothing in that. But there is something to be said about athletics, because the goal of athletics is to bring equal people together to try and show their best qualities against adversity. And that's what and when that happens, when Patrick Mahomes, whether people like him or not, throws that last minute touchdown pass, puts together an amazing drive, it's inspiring. You're not witnessing the worst of humanity because guys are smashing into each other. You're watching the best of humanity as people equally matched struggle against adversity to see who can come out on top. And so I hope that we're equally matched so it doesn't look like I just get my butt kicked.
I think we're going to have a good time.
That's what it's about.
I think so too. You know, and actually, as you mentioned that, Jacob, about modern warfare and doing this, look at the disaster that our foreign policy has been over the last few decades, where we sent all this blood and toil into the Middle East, and we played that game where we would overwhelm our opponents. but look at what happened to the souls of many of our soldiers who've come back who are broken. You know, look at the mess that this country's in.
War, the more you learn, people tend to compare war with athletics. The difference in war and athletics is that war is about literally, like, imagine going over to the other team with baseball bats and breaking all their legs and beating their heads in. Like, no one would watch that and be like, oh, this is great, this is glorious. Right. And not only that, it's like one team has like 100 guys and the other has like 20. Yeah. Like, that's what war is. Yeah. War is awful violence against human beings. It wrecks souls. And I'm not a radical pacifist. I do believe it can be necessary in certain circumstances, but as Christians, nothing should be more perverse to us than that. But on the same token, as a Christian, to participate in athletics where you're trying to bring out the best of the human soul, like, that's something beautiful, and that's something we can get behind. So people should never conflate sort of real awful warfare with athletic competition. And at the end of the day, like, we're going to go for it. We're going to try and win. It's going to be a real competition.
It's awesome.
And hopefully people will enjoy watching it and the best will come out.
Jacob IsBell, final words.
There was an exchange on MASH regarding war and hell. And what's his name makes the case that war is much worse. Well, how do you figure that? Well, who goes to hell? Well, it's the sinners, it's the murderers, it's those who rejected the word. What about those who die in war? And it's usually the innocent bystanders. So of the two, war is much worse. I'm glad that we have the luxury of competing one with another with words and ideas. And it's we use the words so that way it doesn't end up resorting to swords. In other words, I think this is a step in the right direction in peacemaking, having some physical combat.
Agreed.
Well, that was awesome. Great having the conversation here. I love having these. I think it's really important, folks, that we have civility. I think that, you know, this idea of, you know, physical and engaging people in that way, it's actually, it's also a very Mormon thing, you know, because Mormons, the physicality of the body is very important. That's why Mormons in the 19th century were one of the few Christian groups that were allowed to dance, because everybody else looked at the body as a sin. Mormons could dance, and they're great dancers. Wow. They're great wrestlers. Why? Because our prophet was a great wrestler. They're great people, great human beings. I love the Restoration, the people of the Restoration so much. And I think this is going to be an awesome battle royale. And you have something else to say, IsBell?
Steve Pinnaker, you're going to have to lead us in the dance competition as you are there at the event. You just inspired me right now. There's going to be a dance competition. Steve Pinnaker is the one to beat.
It's Pinnaker, but that's okay. I'll
say it however I want. You want to wrestle me?
Okay, okay.
We can do 2 on 1. Let's 2 on 1. Buddy. We can get him with 2 on 1. Well, we need to make sure that people know where to get tickets if you want to go.
So you're going to. So I'm going to share the screen one more time.
Let's do that.
And you're going to send an email. You're going to send an email to spiritofjosephwrestling@gmail.com. You'll be sent instructions right there. It's basically the location owner of Power MMA. You'll be sending the money to him. You'll get a confirmation with that. But email spiritofjosephwrestling@gmail.com. Get tickets. It includes the food. It includes all the other events. And geez Louise, maybe we'll make up t-shirts.
Well, that's really cool. I love it. Okay, I'll keep that up there for one more second. All right, hit pause, folks, on the video if you want to see it. Okay, exit out. And yeah, so this is really great. I am very excited to be the person to help promote this whole thing. I think it's really cool. And again, what do you think, folks? Are you going to show up for this? Oh, by the way, does the money go for any, what's this money going for?
It's just covering expenses. And it's going to be, if there is anything beyond what's just covering expenses, it's in the hopes of getting more of these events, especially the scripture competitions and things like that. But really, a true hope of mine is that the rising generation gets super duper excited about jumping into the scriptures for themselves.
Awesome. Okay, yeah. So you scriptorians, come on out. Show us what you can do in that arena as well. All right, folks. Tell us in the comments. Are you going to come to this? What do you think about this whole thing? What do you think about the idea that rather than us all hating each other and hiding behind our keyboards and anonymously attacking like they do to me, why don't we do things out in the open? Let's talk to each other. Let's have conversations. Aaron Shalafaloff, for 2 years, I've been trying to get you on a Zoom call to be man-to-man to talk. Aaron Shalafaloff, take the Zoom link. Be a man. Let's talk for once. All right, folks. There's links in the description for everything that we talked about. For those of you who would like to financially support the channel, there are links there as well. And remember, the most important, and don't forget the merch store, MormonBookReviews.com, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, and all sorts of stuff. That also helps the channel as well. Remember, the most important thing is all the voices of the Restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.